Should I go to see if our audience has any questions? Let me see. This work. Okay. If audience members want to ask any questions, what are some? So one question is, what have been some of the reactions to the series in Iran?
They really liked it. Actually, one thing, as Milena had also pointed out, sometimes it gets tricky doing a story out of Iran for an international audience because we're trying to find that common language. And so sometimes with that language, a lot of people on this side might not like the story, or they might not relate to it, or they find it, okay, well, I know everything. What are you telling me that I don't know? But with this series, actually, it went viral in Iran, both the Zurkhane and the fishing story. And like everybody was posting it, and we got a lot of positive feedback. And yeah, I mean, all around was very positive.
That's good. Did the women who were featured like it?
Yeah, they loved it. That was really, and that was a great part of it, is that when you do a story on women who are your main characters, and they love the story, and then they post it and they feel proud of it, then I feel like, okay, we did a good job.
You're empowering them. Yeah.
Yes.
What about outside of Iran? What has been the reaction to the series? From Vice audiences?
I kind of want to speak specifically to the YouTube comments, which I will say, like, Vice YouTube comment, like all YouTube comments, I shouldn't say specifically Vice, are not always, super delightful. The comments on these pieces were so heartwarming. And that was something else that I thought was like special about this series, is although it looked at 4 different challenges, and I don't think in all of those pieces, it was a challenge that was, women were striving to overcome it. And in all of the pieces, that was still a work in progress. Mm-hmm. It was still incredibly heartwarming, I think. And the comments reflected that. They were like very earnest. And I was just looking at the mechanics comments a few moments ago, and there were all of these male, or I think that they were male mechanics from the US commenting on it and being like, this is so amazing. I'm so proud of them. And it's really nice to see that.
What's the collaborative process like with your team, Gelareh? Is that something that and is Vice or Courtney and Milena also involved with the team, or are you mainly the person who's connecting or channeling? If you could talk about a little bit about the wider collaboration.
Sure. For the collaboration. So at first, for the pitching part, I would pitch to Courtney, or if it's another group, because there's different groups with Vice, like VNT or Vice World News and the other different domains. So I would pitch directly to them, and then once I get the green light, then we're given a catching producer from Vice's end, someone like Milena, and all of us get on the call together. So for example, if it's myself, Kati, and Sarah, and then it would be everyone, we would all get on one call, and we would talk about the story. And then if on the field there's a need to go back and forth, then for example, yeah, my team would be in touch with Vice themselves, with the catching producer specifically, and they could work out details. So it's quite a big collaboration, and it's really nice to see that there is constant communication, as was mentioned, and it's very fluid. So there isn't this feel like, oh, maybe it should only be like one of us talking. It's like everyone has this like sort of open window to add comments, to give their reflections, and then based on all the feedback and back and forth, we reach a conclusion. And then once we film the piece and collect all the material, then we do a rough assemble on our site in Iran. We send it over, Vice gets this translated, and then they look and then they give feedback, and then it gets finalized on Vice's end. So we do half of it here, and then the other half gets done there.
Thank you. Milena, what's it like for you working with the larger extended team in Iran?
Oh, it's been great. And just everyone has been like so responsive, and like Gelareh was saying, we were truly in constant communication, probably to the point where they're probably sick of me. So it was like WhatsApp and like Frame.io and Google Docs, and sometimes we'd have like several conversations happening on different platforms. But I think that was really the key to really pulling this off, because we knew coming into this that this wouldn't be, we couldn't just have the footage, like the rough cut passed on to us and then, not involve the team. Like it had to be something that was super, super integrated. And it was really wonderful, like working with them. And I think one of the things as well that was really key is, it went beyond, notes about, oh, we should swap out this shot, or we should, like end on this bite, down to like the subtitles, the language that we used, in the VO. We got, we had to be really, really granular with it. And especially, and I keep harping on the translations, but, Farsi is such a rich language, and we really wanted to be careful not to over simplify when we were translating. And so we would sometimes, because typically what happens is when the rough cut gets sent to us, we would immediately send it out to a third party translator. And then, what we would get back wouldn't always be completely coherent. And so we'd have to like take several stabs at that. And so we would literally just sit on the phone, or send like snippets back and forth and say, okay, is amphitheater really what he's saying here? Or like, can we tweak it to this? And we really did spend a lot of time on polishing the translations, and of course, the script itself and like the VO.
Was that done mostly on Zoom or on the phone, or how do you all communicate?
So we would start out in Google Doc.
In Google Doc.
Like most people. And we would start off with like leaving comments, and usually most things we could address just by resolving comments within the doc. But if there's anything that required a bit more follow-up, like going back to our characters and getting more information from them, which is what would usually happen during like the first pass, then, we would do that. And then if there anything, once you start getting closer to locking the cut, we would probably need to actually get on a call so that we could be a bit more expedient with our changes. And so closer towards like the second half of the editing is when we would get on the call a lot more.
Thank you. Courtney, one of the questions is for you. Do you have any advice for freelancers trying to work with Vice?
Yes, I've been mulling that over. Particularly in video, and I spent a lot of my career working in text, so I can also speak to that a bit. But particularly in video, I think working with Vice as a freelancer can mean so many different things. It can mean like being like A cam or B cam on a shoot with primarily a Vice team. It can mean being a freelance producer who has flown someone somewhere. It can mean being like a freelance producer who lives there locally and is working with our team. So there's so many different sort of ways that can work. I would say, like, first and foremost, that people should really, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I am more than happy to help connect them with the right person in the newsroom. A lot of it comes down to that as well. There's a lot of different teams. There's 3 different digital video teams, North America, Europe, and Asia. There's also Vice News Tonight. There's Showtime. So it's like any newsroom, like the different teams have different strategies and mandates, and those also evolve as Gelareh was explaining. We started doing more series, and that's actually how the motorcycles piece then turned into a series. So people should really feel free to reach out to me, and I can help them like make inroads. speaking more generally, I would say there is a path for freelance shooters. You know, we do have someone who sets up deployments, and people can kind of get into our Rolodex that way for deployments. If people are interested in doing what Gelareh and her team does, which is, you know, like make a film themselves, and we just work with them and give feedback along the way, and then, you know, have our producers basically take it over the finish line within the Vice offices. I think that's about finding the senior producer or supervising or executive producer in the newsroom on a team that, like, where the strategy aligns with the pitch, and then just like pitching it well, you know, like really clear with the scope, the import, what does it all mean, what makes it a Vice story, what makes it differentiated. But yeah, I'm also more than happy to give people advice one-on-one if anyone ever wants to reach out.